They laughed at me. Not just a polite chuckle, but a full-throated, mocking laugh that echoed through the Carter family's dining room. My husband smirked, my sister-in-law rolled her eyes, and my mother-in-law delivered the final blow. "A business? You, that's adorable." I smiled that night, pretending it didn't pierce me, but inside I carved those words into stone. While they slept soundly in their comfort, I was awake, building, plotting, and waiting. 3 years later, the world knew my name and the company my mother-in-law worked for. It belonged to me. I remember the first time I pressed record. It wasn't anything fancy, just my phone propped up on the kitchen counter, the warm glow of a lamp giving my face a softness I didn't quite feel inside. I wanted to capture a moment of honesty, a simple attempt to share what had been living inside me for months, the seed of a business idea that I believed could grow into something real. I smiled at the camera, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," I said, choosing my words carefully, "and I want to start something of my own, a business that feels small now but has the chance to make an impact." Behind me, the reflection of my mother-in-law flickered across the glossy cabinet glass. Linda had just come into the kitchen, her presence sharp, her lips curling into that familiar half-smile that always seemed to question me without saying a word. She didn't interrupt. She didn't have to. Her look said everything. Later that evening, when the whole family gathered for dinner, my idea became the punchline of their conversation. "A business?" my sister-in-law sneered, her fork clinking against her plate. "Emily, that's ambitious." My husband smirked, not meeting my eyes, and then came the final strike from Linda. "It's adorable," she said flatly. "Watching you play, pretend. But maybe you should focus on the home. Businesses aren't built on wishful thinking." I laughed with them, a light sound that masked the sting. I told myself it was easier to pretend their words didn't matter, but inside, I knew I would never forget the way their laughter lingered in the air like smoke, choking me in silence. That night, I uploaded the video to my private account. Only a handful of people could see it, but that didn't matter. I wanted to put it somewhere, to mark the moment I chose myself over their doubt. As the video processed, I stared at the tiny spinning icon on my screen, my chest heavy with a mix of dread and defiance. The first comment appeared within minutes. Just a few words, casual and cruel. "This is just a silly girl's game." I froze, rereading it over and over. It wasn't from a stranger. It was from one of my husband's friends, someone who knew us well, someone who had been at our wedding. My throat tightened. My idea hadn't even taken its first breath, and already it was being strangled. I set the phone down and let the quiet wrap around me. My reflection stared back from the darkened screen, a woman holding on to a fragile dream, mocked before it could even begin. I thought about deleting the post, about hiding it before more ridicule piled on, but something stopped me. I picked up the phone again, pressing play. Watching myself talk about the business idea, I noticed the spark in my eyes. Faint, but undeniable. There was belief there, and for the first time in a long while, I chose to trust that version of myself more than the voices around me. Linda's laughter replayed in my head like an echo chamber. My husband's smirk, my sister-in-law's dismissive tone, the cruel comment, every fragment lodged deeper under my skin. I told myself to remember it all, to let it fuel me, rather than break me. I leaned back in the chair, the glow of the phone casting shadows across the room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to respond to the comment with sarcasm, maybe even anger. But I didn't. Instead, I whispered to myself, "Not yet." Because deep inside, something had shifted. Their mockery didn't extinguish my dream. It ignited something sharper, something I hadn't felt in years. Determination. I imagined the future, blurry but alive. I saw myself sitting at that same dinner table, not as the subject of their ridicule, but as the one holding all the cards. I saw Linda's smile falter, my husband's smirk erased, my sister-in-law speechless. The thought filled me with a quiet kind of power. I raised the phone again, this time not to record but to stare into the camera lens as though it were a mirror. I let my smile fade, my face settling into something unshakable, my eyes locked onto my own reflection, and in them I saw the beginning of the war I was about to wage. I whispered again, firmer this time, not yet, but soon. The screen dimmed, reflecting only my outline. For a moment I studied the woman in the glassy black surface. Me, yet not me. Not the Emily they thought they could dismiss. Not the Emily they believed would give up after a single cruel comment. This Emily would endure the sting, transform it, and return sharper. The house was silent, but inside my chest, the echoes of their laughter still burned. I let it play one last time in my mind, sealing it like a scar I would carry forward, not as pain, but as memory. Not as defeat, but as fuel. And in that silence, in that solitary reflection staring back at me, something undeniable flickered across my eyes, a spark, a vow, a promise. 3 words, unspoken but alive in every breath I took. Just watch me. The house always fell into silence after midnight. The laughter and cutting remarks of the evening dissolved into shadows, leaving only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the creak of old wooden beams. That was when I came alive. I set up my phone again, this time not to speak my dreams into the void, but to test them. Small reels, 15 seconds, 30 at most, each one designed to capture a sliver of what I envisioned. A handmade product here, a quick pitch there, a glimpse into a world that I was determined to build. I whispered into the camera, soft but steady. What if ambition could fit in the palm of your hand? Then I cut the clip, layered music over it, and pressed upload. It wasn't polished, but it didn't have to be. It just had to breathe. While upstairs, my husband snored, I watched the numbers flicker on my phone. 3 views, then 10, then a handful of likes from strangers. I didn't expect much. It was an experiment, a test run in a marketplace crowded with noise. Still, each interaction felt like oxygen, proof that my idea wasn't invisible. By the second week, I had a routine. Cook dinner, laugh politely at the jokes that weren't really jokes, clear the dishes, and slip away into my own secret laboratory of creation. Night after night, I refined my reels. Brighter light, tighter editing, sharper words. Slowly, the algorithm began to notice me. And then one night, as the clock blinked 2:17 a.m., it happened. A notification popped up on my screen, different from the usual likes and comments. My reel had received its first order. Someone out there, someone I didn't know, wanted to buy what I had created. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. It was a small amount of money, barely enough to cover the cost of materials, but it was real. It was proof that my idea could live outside the prison of my family's ridicule. My heart raced, pounding like I had just run miles. I pressed my hand against my chest, whispering into the empty kitchen, "This is the start." I didn't sleep that night. I packaged the order with trembling hands, careful as though it were made of glass. I walked to the mailbox before dawn, sliding the package inside as the world still slept. As the lid closed, I felt a rush of defiance surge through me. They would never know that while they mocked me, I was already delivering proof of my worth. Weeks passed, and the orders trickled in, slowly at first, then with a rhythm I could almost trust. By day, I played the role they had scripted for me, the agreeable wife, the accommodating daughter-in-law. By night, I was something else entirely, a builder, a fighter, a woman who refused to stay small. And then came the message that changed everything. It arrived in the middle of the night, just as I was editing another reel. The sender's name stopped me cold, Daniel Hayes. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade, not since college. He had been the kind of friend who believed in impossible ideas, the kind who pushed me to think bigger. And now he was back. "Emily," the message read, "I've been following your reels. I think you're onto something. If you're serious, I want to help. Let's talk." I stared at the words, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. 1,000 doubts rushed in. Why now? Could I trust him? Did he really believe in me? Or was this some elaborate joke? But deep down, I knew Daniel wasn't like the others. He never had been. We spoke in hushed tones over encrypted calls, my voice barely above a whisper as I sat in the laundry room with the door locked. He offered to back me, not with empty praise, but with money, a small investment, enough to buy supplies to test my idea on a larger scale. He wanted nothing in return except updates, a front row seat to watch me grow. For the first time, I felt the weight of possibility in my hands. I opened a new account under a different name, one they would never find, and watched as his deposit landed like a spark in dry tinder. Power pulsed through me, not because of the money itself, but because someone, anyone, believed in me enough to risk something real. I expanded cautiously, pouring every dollar into building, refining, and pushing my idea forward. Every reel became sharper, every product more polished. Slowly, the strangers on the other side of the screen became customers, and customers became repeat buyers. My midnight world grew larger than I ever imagined. And then, one ordinary night, as I sat hunched over my laptop, a new notification blinked at the corner of the screen. It wasn't another order. It wasn't another comment. It was an email. The subject line read, "Urgent. Internal crisis. Confidential." It was from the company where my mother-in-law worked. My pulse quickened. I opened it with trembling fingers, scanning words that blurred together in the glow of the screen. Losses, restructuring, risk of collapse. My mind spun. Their fortress wasn't as invincible as they believed. The cracks were showing, and I was already standing in the shadows, waiting. The email from my mother-in-law's company lingered in my mind like a whisper I couldn't shake. Words like collapse and restructuring burned into my thoughts, each one a crack in the image of power the Carter family had so carefully maintained. I knew then what I needed to do, not just survive their scorn, but step directly into their world. Daniel helped me understand the process. We spoke in coded messages, never too long, never on the same platform twice. "You don't need to buy everything," he said. "Just enough to matter. Just enough to stand in the room when the walls start crumbling." With his guidance, I opened accounts under layers of anonymity. Each click, each transfer, each confirmation screen felt like a secret performance, a drama playing out in the palm of my hand. I would scroll through the company's listings late at night, the same way someone else might scroll through gossip feeds. Only my feed was a catalog of opportunity, and every number represented a piece of the empire they never wanted me to touch. The first purchase was small, almost laughably so, a few shares hidden in the folds of a larger transaction. But when I saw the confirmation screen, "Purchase complete," I felt a surge of electricity through my veins. It wasn't about the size. It was about the principle. A door had opened, and I had slipped inside. I kept buying, week after week, carefully, invisibly. My phone became my weapon, my shield, my confession booth. I would sit at the dining table with the family, nodding politely at conversations I didn't care about, while under the table my thumb hovered over confirm. None of them noticed. None of them suspected that the woman they dismissed as a dreamer was quietly becoming a shareholder in their fragile kingdom. Months passed this way, my midnight acquisitions stacking up like stones. Every time I signed off, I whispered to myself, "They'll never see it coming." And then, one night, the screen lit up with a message that made me pause. Ownership confirmed. Shares transferred successfully. The number on the screen was no longer small, no longer invisible. It was enough to matter, enough to be heard, enough to tip the balance. I sat back, staring at the glow of the confirmation page. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with awe. This wasn't just a game anymore. I wasn't just playing at business while they laughed. I was inside their fortress, holding keys they didn't know I had, but I didn't announce it. Not yet. Silence was still my greatest weapon. The first signs of the company's trouble soon slipped into daylight. My sister-in-law, always so quick to flaunt her position, came home one evening with her confidence cracked. "There are rumors," she muttered at dinner, her fork pushing food around her plate. "Layoffs, restructuring. It's nothing official, but—" Her voice trailed off. Linda brushed it aside with her usual bravado. "Companies adjust all the time. We're strong. Nothing to worry about." But I saw the tightness around her mouth, the flicker in her eyes. She knew something. She just didn't want to admit it. I stayed quiet, sipping my water, letting their fear bloom while I sat on the secret that I was part of the very storm unraveling them. My silence tasted sweeter than any rebuttal ever could. The tension grew each day. My sister-in-law stopped boasting about her projects and instead began checking her phone constantly, frowning at every new notification. The house, once filled with smug confidence, started to hum with unease, and still, no one thought to look at me. Then one night, as I prepared another reel in the quiet of my makeshift office, my phone buzzed with a message. At first, I thought it was another order, another small victory, but when I opened it, my heart skipped. It was from my sister-in-law. "Do you know anything about this?" she wrote, the words frantic, almost desperate. A screenshot followed, an internal memo about ownership changes, about mysterious investors buying up shares quietly in the background, and then the final line of her message, "Who is the anonymous buyer?" I stared at the glowing screen, the words hanging in the dark room. My lips curved into a smile I didn't even realize I was making. She didn't know. None of them did. And that ignorance was my greatest weapon. For now, I let the question linger, unanswered, because the truth would come soon enough. The day I chose to reveal myself, I didn't stand in a boardroom. I didn't make a speech at a podium surrounded by shareholders in press suits. I did what I had always done. I picked up my phone. The live stream began quietly. A simple backdrop, my face lit by a single lamp, no filters, no distractions. I stared into the lens for a long moment, letting the silence stretch until thousands of viewers began to flood in. Some were strangers who had followed my reels from the beginning. Others, I knew, were watching because they had heard rumors that someone unexpected had taken hold of a company on the verge of collapse. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't falter. "My name is Emily Carter," I said, my tone calm, measured. 3 years ago, you might have laughed if I told you I would one day own a company. Some of you did laugh. Tonight, I'm here to tell you that the company in question, the one everyone thought was untouchable, now belongs to me. The comments exploded in a frenzy. Some congratulated me, some doubted, some accused me of lying. But then, as proof, I shared the screen. The official transfer documents flashed across the feed, stamped and signed. My identity as the anonymous buyer was no longer a secret. And somewhere in the Carter household, I knew Linda was watching. I pictured her face as the reality settled in, the way her silence would stretch into something heavier than words. For years, she had looked at me as if I were a child playing dress-up. Tonight, the mask shattered. One comment floated to the top, pinned by the algorithm as though it were fate. "She's changed the game." The words pulsed on the screen, glowing against the darkness of my living room. Changed the game. Yes, that was exactly what I had done. I ended the stream not with a boast, not with a sneer, but with a quiet promise. This is only the beginning. Then I logged off, the silence of the room pressing in, and allowed myself one slow, deliberate smile. The next morning, the household was tense. No one looked me in the eye. My sister-in-law didn't come down for breakfast, and my husband scrolled his phone with a frown so deep it carved into his skin. Linda sat rigid at the table, her teacup untouched, her face pale. She hadn't said a word to me since the live stream, and I didn't expect her to. What could she say? When the call came from HR, I could hear her muffled voice through the walls. They weren't firing her. Not yet. The company still needed her, though not at the level she had once commanded. Her new title was smaller, her responsibilities reduced to little more than routine oversight. A symbolic demotion, one that would sting far more than being cast out. When she emerged from the room, her eyes met mine. For a flicker of a second, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. She passed me without a word, the sound of her footsteps brittle against the hardwood floor. I hadn't demanded her removal. That would have been too easy. Instead, I let her stay, her pride shackled, forced to live each day beneath the shadow of the daughter-in-law she had mocked. That was the sharper blade, the deeper wound. And it worked. The family began to crack. My husband, once so certain of his superiority, lashed out at his mother behind closed doors. My sister-in-law whispered angrily in the hallways, blaming Linda for the company's downfall, for letting someone like me slip through unnoticed. Their unity dissolved into a chorus of accusations, each voice desperate to place the blame anywhere but themselves. I watched it all unfold with a cold clarity. For the first time, I wasn't the outsider. They were. I no longer needed to demand their recognition. Their silence, their fractured alliances, their fearful glances, that was recognition enough. But then, something I didn't anticipate happened. My husband, ever the master of appearances, decided to fight back. Not at the dinner table, not in whispered arguments, but in the same arena where I had claimed my victory. He went live. The notification reached me before I even opened the app. Matthew Carter is streaming now. My stomach tightened as I clicked. There he was, sitting in the same living room where I had once filmed reels in secret, his expression carved from frustration. His voice was steady but brittle as he addressed the audience. You've all seen what my wife has done. You've all celebrated her so-called triumph. But what you don't know is the cost. What you don't see is how ambition can poison a home, how it can turn love into rivalry. She hasn't built a legacy. She's destroyed a family. The comments poured in, half defending him, half defending me. The screen filled with judgment, pity, anger, and awe. It was chaos, and in the chaos, his words cut deep. He wasn't just challenging my victory. He was reframing the story. I closed the app, the echo of his voice still ringing in my ears. This wasn't the end of the battle. It was the beginning of a new war. Success was supposed to feel like triumph, but in reality, it felt more like standing on a tightrope with the world watching, waiting for me to fall. Everywhere I turned, the spotlight followed. News outlets requested interviews. Strangers messaged me daily. Hashtags with my name trended on platforms I had barely used before. I should have been proud. Instead, I felt hollow. At home, the silence grew heavier. My husband rarely spoke to me except to criticize. My mother-in-law avoided me entirely, and my sister-in-law glared at me as though I had personally stolen her life. I had won the battle, but the victory tasted bitter. I ate dinners alone, answered endless emails in the quiet of my office, and realized that in chasing this success, I had built a fortress where I stood entirely by myself. One evening, as I scrolled through my inbox, a new message appeared. The sender's name made my stomach clench. Victor Chen. He was a well-known figure in the investment world, a ruthless strategist who had built empires and destroyed them with equal ease. His reputation was both admired and feared. The subject line was blunt. We need to talk. I opened the email, my hands cold against the keyboard. Victor congratulated me on my accomplishments, but quickly moved to the point. He had been acquiring shares in the shadows, and if I didn't agree to negotiate, he intended to push forward a takeover. His words were calm, almost polite, but the threat beneath them was unmistakable. My vision blurred as I read the final line. You can fight, but you will lose. Sign it over, or I'll take it. For a long time, I just sat there, the screen glowing like a blade aimed at my chest. Everything I had built, every late-night reel, every quiet transaction, every ounce of defiance was suddenly fragile. Someone stronger, sharper, and far more experienced was circling. I whispered into the empty room, "No, not like this." But the fear was real, heavier than anything I had felt before. The next day, I reached out to Daniel, the friend who had believed in me when no one else did. He had been my anchor, my first investor, the one who assured me I wasn't insane to keep pushing. If anyone could help me weather this storm, it was him. We met in a quiet cafe, tucked away from prying eyes. I leaned across the table, showing him the email on my phone. "Victor's coming for everything. I don't know how to fight him." Daniel's eyes flicked across the screen, then back to me. For a moment, there was silence. And then, slowly, a smile curved his lips. "You won't have to fight him," he said softly, "because he's not your real problem." I frowned, confusion knotting in my chest. "What do you mean?" He leaned back, his voice calm, almost too calm. "I didn't just give you money, Emily. I kept something for myself. A safeguard. I still hold controlling rights through a back channel. You've been working under my umbrella all along." The room seemed to tilt. "You... what?" His smile deepened. "Don't look so shocked. Did you really think you could climb this high on your own? I gave you the chance, and now I'm taking what I deserve. You'll sign over majority control to me, or I'll use what I already have to shut you down. Either way, Emily, this company isn't yours anymore. It's mine." The cafe noise faded into static. I stared at him, my chest tight, my pulse hammering. The man who had once been my lifeline was now pulling the ground out from under me. "You're supposed to be my friend," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I was," he said, unflinching. "But friendship doesn't build empires. Power does." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Betrayal crashed over me, sharper than anything Linda or my husband had ever done. This wasn't ridicule. This was theft. This was someone who knew my struggle, who had seen my pain, turning it into a weapon against me. I pushed back my chair so hard it scraped the floor. People turned to look, but I didn't care. I stood, glaring at him, my voice shaking but fierce. "I will not let you destroy my life," I spat. "You think you own me? You think you can undo everything I've built? Watch me, Daniel. Watch me fight back." Heads turned in the cafe, eyes widening, but I didn't stay to see their reactions. I walked out, my hands trembling, my heart pounding, every nerve in my body alive with fury. Outside, the city lights blurred through my tears. I felt the weight of betrayal from every side. My husband undermining me in public, my mother-in-law still seething in silence, and now the friend I trusted most tearing the foundation from under me. But beneath the pain, something else sparked, a darker, sharper determination. If they wanted a war, I would give them one. I didn't sleep after that meeting with Daniel. His words echoed in my mind, sharp and merciless. "This company isn't yours anymore. It's mine." Rage pulsed through my veins, but beneath it, clarity began to form. He thought he had trapped me. He thought silence would protect him. But I had learned long ago that silence could also be broken. Publicly, powerfully. So I picked up my phone, the same device I had used to dream in secret years ago, the same screen where I had first whispered my ambition. I set it to record. My face filled the frame, raw and unfiltered. "This is my story," I began, my voice steady, though my hands trembled off camera. 3 years ago, they laughed at me. They told me I wasn't capable, and even when I built something real, I trusted the wrong person. I trusted someone who thought betrayal could erase my fight. I paused, then dragged Daniel's emails into the frame, screenshots of his threats, his hidden contracts, the coded language he thought no one would ever see. "This is what betrayal looks like. This is what happens when power is abused. But I will not be silent, and I will not surrender. The clip was short, sharp, impossible to ignore. I posted it across every platform, tagging nothing, but letting truth spread faster than any algorithm. Within hours, it caught fire. The betrayal was too clear, too visceral, too human. People shared it not just as news, but as a rallying cry. By dawn, my feed was drowning in messages of solidarity. Women, men, strangers across the globe writing one phrase over and over again. We're so sheroes. The hashtag climbed into trending lists before I'd even finished my coffee. News outlets picked it up. Influencers amplified it, and suddenly my fight was no longer mine alone. What Daniel had meant as chains became fuel for a movement. Still, I knew outrage wasn't enough. Outrage fades. Action endures. That week, I registered something new, the She Rose Fund, a foundation dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs who had been dismissed, mocked, and silenced the way I once was. I funneled company profits into it, not as a gesture of charity, but as an extension of everything I had fought for. If Daniel wanted to own my company, fine, but he could never own the legacy I was about to create. When the fund launched, applications poured in by the thousands, stories just like mine, women fighting to be heard, women scraping together resources in the shadows of disbelief. Reading them, I felt less alone than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't just defending myself, I was building something bigger. And then came the live stream. It wasn't the small, shaky broadcasts of the past. This was global, a virtual stage lit across millions of screens. I stood there, a microphone pinned to my collar, my reflection projected onto feeds in cities I'd never stepped foot in. I was ridiculed, I said, my voice steady, reaching into the silence of countless living rooms. I was betrayed. I was underestimated. But every scar became a stepping stone. Every cruel word became fuel. Tonight I stand not just as Emily Carter, but as proof that laughter cannot kill a dream. And for every woman who has been told she cannot, I am here to say, you can. The comments flooded in. Waves of applause translated into text, hearts and affirmations streaming faster than I could read. But one moment silenced me. Near the end of the broadcast, the feed shifted, and in one of the audience windows appeared Linda, my mother-in-law. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes shimmered with something heavier, older. She leaned closer to the camera, her voice shaking but clear. You've taught me, Emily. You've taught me never to underestimate a woman again. I was wrong. Forgive me. For a breathless second, I stood frozen. The woman who had dismissed me, who had once laughed the loudest, now lowered her pride before millions. It wasn't triumph I felt, it was release. The screen faded into the event's closing credits, but I stayed there, the image of Linda's face etched into me. She hadn't just spoken for herself, she had spoken for every voice that had ever silenced mine. As the broadcast ended, I let myself smile. Slow, deliberate, unstoppable. The camera pulled back, the lights dimmed, and the screen turned black. Only one line remained, bold against the silence. They laughed at me once, but tonight I smile as the winner.